Hi everyone, and welcome to the second podcast in my Career Audit series, where I'm speaking with audit-trained and ACA qualified finance professionals who have made the transition into industry. Those who have watched the first episode with my guest Duncan Keir will have hopefully benefited from his insights into making the move out of audit. But for those new to the channel, the Career Audit main aim is to provide advice to those who recently qualified and are assessing options in industry. Now, I'm a finance recruitment consultant who's worked with many candidates coming from an audit background, and they're always seeking advice and guidance on how to pivot into their first post-practice roles. And I can always give as much support as I can, but it's always nicer to hear it from those who have been there and done it. With that in mind, today, Ellen Broadhurst has kindly joined me. And just like my last guest, she qualified at Deloitte too. She's now in a finance manager role at Valeo Foods, where she's been for the last couple of years. Ellen, thank you very much for joining me. To kick things off, I'd be keen to hear a bit more about your pre-audit background, really, as you didn't do the traditional routes of uni into then like an accounting or audit role. Instead, you went straight into Deloitte after sixth form, right?
Yeah, so back then I don't think it was as big of a thing as it is now, but it was a school leaver program that all the big four were kind of offering similar versions of. And it was kind of a case of, okay, what can I do that's not uni? Can I fast track my way in somewhere that, to be honest, like at the time it was a case of, I didn't want to write a personal statement for uni, didn't want to necessarily spend the money, and thought maybe I can earn some money
Yeah.
first.
I remember
So yeah, that's
it took so long to that personal statement. I remember it like it was yesterday.
And do you know what? The irony of it all is that I actually probably wrote more doing all the
Yeah,
apprenticeship bits and pieces and all of that in the end. So, but
yeah,
that was kind of the thought at the time.
yeah. Nice. And then, so I guess when you got to there, so ultimately, like when you kind of started, like, did you think, yeah, I'm going to qualify here and then move straight, kind of leave audit, go into industry, or did you kind of not really know exactly kind of where your career goals were when you first joined?
It's hard to say as like an 18-year-old. I
Yeah,
feel like when I thought about it, I guess I don't really know if it was my long-term plan, but I couldn't have said yes or no at that point in time. It was very much this seems like a good move right now. I didn't know what audit was. I had no idea
yeah.
what audit was. So it was a case of let's go into the role, see how it is. And maybe I'll be an audit partner potentially. Who knows? But I
Mhm.
think, I probably worked out after a couple of years that I probably wasn't going to be there forever. But
Yeah.
yeah, when I first started, could have gone either way. I didn't know.
Yeah, I guess out of interest, like, how many like of I guess your peer group who joined at the same time as you, or maybe did the kind of the program, how many like ultimately went on to go up to like audit manager, and how many kind of like left in the same like rough time period as you did?
Yeah. So my intake of school leavers was only about 12 in that year
Okay.
at Deloitte. And I think a few dropped out because of exams. I think had about 7 or 8 made it to qualification. And then there's only now 2 left that stayed to manager. Everyone else kind of disappeared off quite soon after qualifying or, in the past year or so.
Yeah, from my perspective, like the bulk of people who I'm speaking to who are in audit and looking to make the move outside are people who have like qualified either recently. I mean, obviously, with it being October time now, I know it's obviously a big time of year for people to be qualifying. But yeah, so it's those sorts of people, people who are like 1 or 2 years post qualified. That's because obviously it's almost like a period. Like once you get to that level, like so many just drop off, don't they?
It's a
So
mass exodus. That's what it is.
yeah,
You suddenly look around and
yeah,
no one you know is left, and you're like, "Oh, what's happened here?"
yeah.
But yeah.
And then when I guess maybe sort of as you were coming up to qualifying, like what roles did you like have your eye on at the time, or were you keeping a bit of an open mind?
I did a bit of a strange thing. I don't think I necessarily was looking at specific roles because I actually used Deloitte for a career break, so I had a bit of a break before I left Deloitte and left audit
Mm.
finally. So it was kind of I came back from career break and then was assessing. Okay, now I've got like a fresh mind. Is this
Hmm.
something I want to stay and do, or do I need to look at other things? And so at that point, it was very much I don't know what I want to do, but I think I've worked out I want to leave audit. So I kind of just started looking on LinkedIn, like putting my CV out there to recruiters and talking to people about different jobs. I didn't go in with any intention of this is definitely what I want to do. So I was
Hmm.
quite open minded, I think.
Yeah, and then the role that you're in now, like, would you say like how would you say that compares to audit in terms of, because I guess on one end of the spectrum you've got like the audit side, on the other end you might have like a really kind of like commercial finance type position. Like how would you say, like where's your role kind of like on that scale?
It's mixed. I've done kind of a bit of everything, but it's definitely leans more towards reporting and control, just from where it's ended up. But yeah, there is a mix of stuff in the role that's kind of, I've done some FP&A bits and I've kind of done a little bit of business partnering. So it's kind of mixed, but I'd say more on the reporting side.
Yeah. Do you feel like the reporting side kind of came more natural considering your audit background compared to the FP&A side, or did you kind of manage to grasp both pretty?
No, I mean, I think I think audit, the perk is you pick up things quickly. Like you learn to pick up things on the fly and just go with things. But it's funny. As soon as I saw a set of financial statements from industry side, or was talking to auditors from industry side, it's amazing how natural that is because of audit. So you sit there and you go, oh, you want me to prep some financial statements? Yeah, sure. Like, no problem. Like,
Yeah.
I can audit it for you as well if you really want. I can do the whole thing. But yeah, no, the kind of audity stuff and anything along the lines of stats or talking to auditors, that's just second nature when you've done, well, I did 4 or 5 years in audit. So it's kind of like it does just come more naturally.
Yeah. And then did you ever consider going into like a commercial finance type role, for example? I mean, I know you
I
said you were
think,
keeping your options pretty open.
yeah, I did, and I did actually. The first interview I ever went for actually was for a finance business partner role. I can't remember like exactly what it was business partnering with, but it was more that kind of like commercially type of role rather than reporting heavy and kind of business partnering with other parts of the company. And I walked out of that interview. I mean, I completely flunked the interview. I walked out and thought I wouldn't employ me, so good start. But no,
Did you say that was the first interview you did?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
It was
if you've been off the game, off the interview game for like 3-4 years,
no, honestly, it was
you
embarrassing. And I sat there and I almost wanted to tell them that I'm really sorry. Like this isn't me. I'm coming across horrendously. Like, please don't employ me. But yeah, it was absolutely awful anyway. But I do know that job, there was significantly more people that hadn't got an ACA or hadn't got qualifications, but were significantly more qualified with experience. So they were coming from similar roles or business partnering commercial roles. So even if I'd have aced that interview, I think there was more competition there anyway because of people had other experience that was more relevant.
Yeah, I'd say I think from my side, really, we're typically speaking like the more like commercial finance type roles. If I'm hiring for one of those, like more times than not, the hiring manager will definitely be more closed off to bring in someone on from an audit background. Again, like what I was saying earlier about like the scale of like if audit's on one side, commercial finance is the other. It's a very simplistic way of looking at it, of course. But did you know like kind of who you were up against in those sorts of roles, or was it were you kind of guessing that you'd be up against candidates with industry experience?
The only insight I really had was from recruiters in those kind of situations.
Right.
So they'd kind of flagged to me that other people that are going for it are kind of like have similar backgrounds already, haven't come from audit. So that was kind of all the insight I had on that.
Yeah. And then when you're in those interviews, like what were you kind of? Because I mean, I think when people speak with me and they're looking to leave audit, I mean, it's fine to be honest and say, do you know what, I'm bored of audit. It's long hours. I'm fed up of that sort of thing. It's fun. I think it's fine saying that to a recruitment consultant like me, but obviously in an interview you have to be a little bit more tactful about how like your reasons for leaving / reasons for joining kind of come about. So like, how did you kind of get around that without the cliche of
Yeah. Yeah, do you know what? To be honest, that was probably easier for me because I never found audit boring per se. Like those
Yeah.
classic reasons for leaving. There was a bit of, yeah, it was a lot of long hours and I didn't think I was necessarily being valued for the long hours. It was a little bit of that, but I never found audit boring. I'd kind of reached a point of going,
Yeah.
I know I'm not the best at this. I think I could be better at other things.
Mm.
So it was a kind of selling it on that. And also I knew that having only done audit from the age of 18 and never seen anything else of business or the world, I kind of hadn't expanded and learned what I could learn. And it was a lot for me about wanting to learn more and wanting to try new things and seeing where maybe my expertise lies that wasn't audit. And so that was kind of quite an easy question. I quite liked that question because I had lots of good reasons for leaving audit that weren't just, oh, it's a bit boring, it's a bit hard work, like
Yeah,
classics. So there's
yeah,
always a bit of that thrown in, but there was much
yeah.
more of like a drive to be like, do you know what? I really want to try new stuff. I really want to learn more and do more. So
Yeah, yeah. Maybe I've done audit a little bit of a disservice there, but to be fair, I have had conversations where people like do like go on a bit about, you know, it's so boring, and I do think, yeah, I can understand why you'd potentially want to go into a more exciting role, but also,
yeah,
you know, if it's really like dead boring to you, like why did you kind of go into it in the first place? But I guess
yeah.
that's a topic for another day, I guess. And then like when you were interviewing, like what were you like? What were sort of the both hard and soft skills that you were kind of like mentioning to the hiring teams in terms of how you can successfully adapt from going from audit into industry? I know you said earlier like some stuff like, you know, the stat accounts, you know, put that in front of you and it's almost second nature to you. But like, were there any kind of areas where you had to like really test yourself? Well, not necessarily test, but like kind of like really like prove how you can manage that transition from audit to industry.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like you said, the given is that you'll be good at stat stuff and you'll be good at dealing with auditors. That's kind of a lot of the reason why people might want you in their company, right? So that's kind of like a given. You kind of don't need to sell that about yourself. People know that. I think the bits that people don't necessarily realize that auditors can be really good at is all the like data analysis and getting insights from data. Like there's a lot of work you do in audit that means you're actually very good at interpreting and very quick at finding trends in data and things like that because of the work you've done for years. And that's not something people necessarily will think, oh yeah, an auditor's good at that. So there was one interview where I had to do like a bit of a case study and kind of they gave me a set of data on a bit of paper and went, can you pull out the trends from this and tell me what you see about our company from this? And I looked at it and I was like, oh, great, this is really fun. Yeah, cool. Yeah, let me tell you about this. This is great. So that's the kind of thing that you wouldn't necessarily think an auditor's good at, but that was definitely a hard skill, good at like data, good at working with big sets of data. That's something you do a lot in audit. And then soft skills wise, I think being able to challenge people. No one likes an auditor. No one loves when an auditor comes to talk to you. And to be honest, I've flipped now. I don't like it when auditors come and talk to me particularly. But you have to have those difficult conversations and you have to challenge people. And when there's a bit of accounting that's wrong, you have to go to your client and go, yeah, I think this is wrong. And you have to explain it and push on why it needs to be changed. And funnily enough, clients push back on that. So dealing with difficult conversations, I think, is something that's a soft skill that auditors do build up really well.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then, so obviously you ended up at Valeo Foods, obviously a very kind of a product-based consumer-focused company. Were you, when you were at Deloitte, were you auditing like a particular, clients in a particular sector, like for example, food, or were you kind of just
Yeah. No, ironically, absolutely not. So
Yeah.
my biggest client in audit, and I joke about it a lot because it's kind of funny the amount of specific knowledge I have on waste industries. So yeah, my biggest client that I had for the entire time I was at Deloitte was a waste management company that had contracts with councils.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was kind of my specialty, and I knew about weighbridges and all the rubbish
Yeah.
tips and how they operate and where the money comes from. So that was bizarre knowledge.
Yeah.
But I kind of never thought I'd find that exciting in industry. So
Yeah.
no, I had no FMCG audit experience. I hadn't done any of that at all. So that was completely new to me.
Yeah, I mean, from my angle, like when I've been hiring for roles. So, I mean, Agora Talent's focus is kind of like retail and consumer. So we work with a lot of clients within that space. So I think a lot of the time, you know, there'll always be a preference for our clients to bring on someone, assuming they are kind of looking like for someone straight out of audit. Like there's always but more times than not, there's always a preference to bring on someone who's audited those clients before. But to be fair, I think from what I've found, I think the main thing that would potentially rule people out isn't necessarily, you know, oh, you've not audited a fashion client and we're a fashion brand. It's not quite as cutthroat as that. But I think what I've noticed is like the difference between like financial services audits and non-financial services audits, and because I think, you know, a lot of hiring managers will be like, yeah, they kind of audit anything, but if they're like banking, capital markets focused, then it's not really directly relevant for us. So, because am I right thinking that in the Big Four, well, or your experience at Deloitte, was that kind of treated very separately? Like, so you'd have a different team that would focus solely on like financial services clients?
There was different divisions. They changed a lot throughout the time I was there, but clients were always kind of separated. So theoretically, you'd work on a similar base of clients. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I do think I agree, because to be fair, when I was looking at roles, I don't think I necessarily thought I'd understand like a banking client as well,
Yeah.
or things like that. So FMCG to me, or anything kind of retail, it was like, well, at least I can understand the logic of that. Like that's not
Yeah.
necessarily, I mean, I've now learned it's more complex than I initially thought, but in my head it was like, okay, well, products, yeah, I can do, like, products make
Yeah.
sense in my head, therefore I can learn that. That's like something I can pick up. So I think that's kind of what
Yeah.
steered me that way, rather than looking at stuff that was more complex and like you might need that specific knowledge.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And then ultimately, obviously, you end up at Valeo Foods. So say after let's say after your first week, I don't know, obviously it's obviously bound to be a lot of inductions and all the HR sort of
Yeah.
stuff like that. But like after your
Yeah.
first week, like what do you kind of come away thinking? Like, do you think, wow, this is, I can do this, or do you think, oh, this transition is, it's different to what I thought? I mean, I know you can't really give a full idea after the first week, but as a
No,
rough
I
one.
think, yeah, I think it was kind of in two parts. There was very much a literal sigh of relief, because I immediately wasn't quite so stressed. There was an
Mhm.
immediate like, oh, okay, I can breathe. I can just do the work that's expected of me, and I can go home. Oh, this is quite nice. So there was that initial kind of breathing space that was kind of a shock, actually, because yeah, you get so used to just working a lot of the time that you kind of, yeah, don't chill out as much. And it was quite nice to have that breathing space. And then once I'd kind of got through that, okay, I can breathe now, I was then like, oh, I really don't know anything. This is kind of I thought I'd be fine. I thought I'd be fine. Why don't I know things? And it's weird going from a place where after 4 or 5 years in audit, you've picked up quite a lot and you've actually become quite good at it, and you know what you're talking about and you feel confident in that, to okay, now I'm probably the stupidest person in the room and I have to really try and learn and pick up everything I can about how this business works, to try and like have a seat at the table and actually contribute something. So that was probably the later realization.
Yeah. Do any of your colleagues like whether they're kind of like on the same kind of like level of seniority to you, or maybe like your managers, for example, have any of them come from audit backgrounds?
Yeah, yeah. I work with a few people that have audit backgrounds, but not necessarily Big Four audit, just different audit companies. But the majority don't. So there's a few here and there that do,
Yeah.
but at the moment, yeah, the majority
Yeah.
don't.
Yeah. So it's not like you had like loads of people to bounce off in terms of like your experience, but I'm guessing you still obviously, by the sounds of it, sounded pretty settled in after the first week or so.
Yeah, yeah. No, there wasn't like, yeah, it was a bit of a, oh, I don't know what to do here. But to be honest, I was lucky in the sense people I worked with or joined at a similar time with at Deloitte had left at similar times. So I actually
Yeah.
managed to bounce off them more externally to my work, and kind of we were all in a similar place of, okay, wow, yeah, we have
Mhm.
to learn quite a lot here. So yeah.
Yeah. And like, was there anything like you felt like you had to like learn completely from scratch? Because as I know we've said multiple times about, the start accounts comes natural, but was there anything in your role that you felt maybe someone coming from an industry background might know slightly more about this particular area than me, for example?
To be honest, just in general, the industry knowledge. When you come from audit, maybe if I'd have done FMCG clients, I might have had more of an awareness of it. But I do remember sitting in certain meetings and there were like acronyms being thrown around, and I was like, oh my God, I literally don't know what you're talking about. Like,
Yeah.
I need to know about this stuff. And I guess the kind of the way it's silly in audit, you do all the audit of the numbers, but you don't necessarily see how finance works. So it was simple things like learning, okay, this is commercial finance, this is what these guys do, and this is how that works for the business, and how that works, how operational finance works, and how that all ties into the reporting function. Like all of that kind of stuff was probably the stuff I felt like I didn't know anything about, and was very like, okay, need to switch on and learn this.
Yeah. Okay. And then like a year after moving, like what? Like, I guess what sort of like area of finance like do you feel like you developed the most in?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of things. Like I was quite lucky that I managed to do like a stint doing the FP&A for a section of the business. And so that was something I'd never done. Obviously, like analytics, data, numbers, it's kind of, I knew about it, I can do it, that's fine. But actually, how FP&A works and the purpose of it, I kind of picked up all that and had to do that. So that was quite a big learning point. And there was also a lot of doing the analysis, but then getting the big picture understanding and working out the strategic impact for the business of all of that. So in audit, you do a lot of the numbers and checking they're right and all the like actual analysis and data, but you don't necessarily step back and go, okay, but like, what's the impact of this? And so I think that was something I developed or have developed quite a lot in the past couple of years, is just understanding and having more awareness of how numbers then impact decisions within the business and things like that.
So did you, like, I guess looking back now, like, do you certainly feel like you're kind of a lot more like value add than you were when you were at Deloitte? I mean, not to take anything away from or
Yeah.
if there's like adding value or anything, but obviously that's kind of like a key reason. Like, you're going back to what we were saying earlier about, why people are, open to making a move, is that kind of like they want to be more value add.
Yeah,
So
I think it's nice to be audit's very backwards looking, which is the way I always felt it was. It's nice to be a part of a business where you're driving forward and you're looking at, okay, if we do this, what's going to happen in the future? Like, how can we make this better? What's this going to affect? All of that feels much more value add, like you said, than backwards looking audit. Don't get me wrong, audit's important, and I still stand by that, which is still why I have time for the auditors that come and talk to me, because I appreciate it. But it is quite nice to be forward looking and having that impact going forward, rather than just kind of as a statutory requirement and whatever else.
Yeah. And then on the flip side, is there anything you miss about audit in particular? I mean, if you say no, I'm not gonna like hold that against you. And
No,
I don't want to fit
honestly,
in with the boring stereotype you mentioned earlier, but
no, the bit I genuinely miss, and you might get it if you get like a leaver role in a really big company, I guess. But for me, because I did it as a school leaver, my cohort I joined Deloitte with were my like equivalent of friends I made at uni. So that kind of big group of us, and you all work together, that kind of like progression, like I kind of miss the whole team atmosphere of your intake all working together. And I don't think that's something you necessarily get apart from in your first grad role or your first school
yeah.
leaver role. So that definitely, audit specifically, if we're talking about like the job, I'd say probably the rotation of clients. Like, I did quite like the ability to be like, right, this is my job for the next 3 months. And then actually we wrap this up and I get to do something completely new and work again and get new clients and talk to new people and a new team. So there was a lot of like change, which I quite liked, because it meant you were constantly like thinking about new things, going to new client sites, etc.
Yeah. And do you feel that like you'd have done anything differently, whether that's, I don't know, with a job search, with kind of settling in at all, or do you not look back and have any regrets at all? No, I
No,
know regrets must be a bit of a strong word, but
no. I always say this about audit and current job and everything else, is that you wouldn't be where you are now if you hadn't done those things and taken those steps. So I don't ever regret audit, because I think the base knowledge in finance it gives you, and the awareness of like numbers and all the skills you learn in audit that you don't necessarily realize you have until you leave, all of that is so important. Am I glad I left? Yes, because I think it can get harder to leave if you stay longer, and it's kind of scarier to leave as you get more senior and you're very ingrained in audit. But yeah, no regrets.
yeah. And was anything like you wish you'd known at all, or like, did you feel like at the time you were equipped with everything? I mean, I know obviously you said when you were joining Deloitte, you kind of you didn't really know what audit was, for example. But like, I guess when it came to moving on, like, did you feel like mentally like equipped with everything you need to know about what you need to do to get that next job?
Do you know what? And the great thing is, I think I was probably very naive, and it was a good thing at the time. I think I was so like, oh yeah, like I know what I'm doing. Like, this is fine. Of course I can get another job. Like, that's not a problem. So I think, and that was quite good when I was applying for stuff, because it probably meant I went into interviews more confidently and spoke about jobs like I could do them without that much effort. I was probably a bit too confident and a bit naive. And so that was kind of good. And then you walk into the job and it kind of humbles you a bit, and you go, okay, yeah, I got some room to grow here. But yeah, so I think kind of like, yeah, that confidence of just, well, no, let's call it naivety. It was definitely naivety, thinking that you'd be able to kind of handle everything and just know it all straight away. But yeah, definitely didn't.
Yeah. And then I guess looking forward, if you were to ever want to hire someone within your team, do you feel like you'd have a bit of a almost like an unconscious bias to hiring someone, like almost like a mini you, like hiring someone from audit? Like, I mean, I don't know if you've ever kind of hired anyone yourself in this role, but like if you were.
Do you know what? I don't know if I'd hire a mini me. I think there'd be too much. there'd be too much chat and too much challenge. They'd be challenging me on what I was doing all the time. And no, I think unconscious bias, probably yes. Probably I go, oh, cool, you were Deloitte, you were PwC too. And do you know what? Maybe not even Big Four. Maybe I'd have unconscious bias towards Deloitte. There's that whole Big Four war, right? You know, like I probably am a bit biased towards Deloitte still, just because, you know, it's where I was for so long. Yeah, I think it does hold some weight having that Big Four on your CV, and I probably would, especially having been. I don't know if people that aren't from the Big Four would have a different opinion, but having done that, I know the kind of levels you have to work at and the amount of effort you had to put in to kind of survive in those roles. Therefore, I appreciate that as a skill someone could bring.
Mm-hmm. And if and again, if you did have like a role you were hiring for, and you wanted the audit background, as we just say, would you do you think it's fair for hiring managers to kind of say we only want Big Four? Like, because obviously there's really reputable firms like BDO, RSM, Grant Thornton, etc. Who, because I mean, I've worked with hiring managers who are very fixated on the Big Four, which I guess is completely fine, because ultimately, you know, people like yourself worked really hard to get into the Big Four. So, you know, in theory, why should you be on a level playing field with someone from who's maybe, as a very simplistic way of looking at it, maybe hasn't worked quite as hard? I know that's probably doing a massive disservice to people who
everyone out there screaming at you now.
I'm probably going to be really unpopular by saying that. But either way, like, do you feel it's fair that people from the Big Four should, you know, are kind of viewed as kind of like of high caliber as candidates?
I think it's hard. Like, I mean, will I always be grateful that? Is it a perk? When I was 18 years old and thinking of what I wanted to do, I didn't ever realize would be a thing. Now I think it's great, because I look at it, and if like, I remember when I was applying for this job, and you see job specs and they specify and they go Big Four required, and it's kind of a thing, you go, oh well, glad I did that then, glad I was at Deloitte then. But do I think it's fair? Not necessarily, because I do think people need to be treated on a case-by-case basis. And if for some reason 18-year-old me had have decided not to do Big Four and gone some other path and worked somewhere else, do I think I'd be any different? No, I think I would have worked as hard in any other role, and I'd hope someone that would interview me, would give me a chance and interview me, and then through an interview I could prove that I was just as capable as someone that had Big Four experience. So nice perk that I have it and can tick that box, but I do think that people that are hiring individuals shouldn't necessarily restrict it based on that, because there'll be plenty of talent outside of the Big Four.
Yeah, I guess it's a classic case of like the higher up the pyramid you go. It's like, again, like, so someone like yourself 2 years ago, you know, if there's purely from a profile perspective, not having like interviewed anyone, like, I think purely from a profile perspective, yeah, you probably will stand out more than someone who is AC qualified but not Big Four. Obviously, all other factors equal. But I guess obviously the higher up you go, like say you're kind of a head of finance level, and you've got someone from Deloitte versus someone from BDO, for example, then realistically they'll probably have like 5+ years post qualified experience. So it's that post qualified experience that counts ultimately. And yeah, I mean, in general, like, because I mean, because obviously I speak with candidates who are kind of making that wanting to make that transition. Like, what would you say is like the biggest bit of advice? I know that's such an open question, and we've probably covered a lot of it previously. But what would you say is like the main area?
Yeah, I think probably that if audit's not something that you love, then it's worth trying something else. And it's scary, especially like for grads and for school leavers. It's like, it's probably all you've ever known in a work sense, and you've been there at quite a lot of years, and you've not really had to do an interview or write a CV for a few years. So I think it's quite daunting. And it's kind of like that if you really love audit's a great career if you love it. If you actually enjoy it, it's a great place to be. And if you're very good at it, fantastic. I think it's a case of going, okay, is this something I want to do long term, or do I need to get more experience, and do I have to take that step and kind of be brave and give something else a go? So the bit of advice I'd say is probably don't leave for the sake of leaving because everyone else is leaving. If you enjoy audit, that's a good thing. Stay in audit, like, go for it. It's a great career. Yeah. But then it's kind of like, if you don't see yourself in audit, don't be scared or put off, and just apply for stuff and see what happens, I guess. Yeah. And in terms of like jobs you're applying for, I think I fell down the trap of applying for stuff I wasn't necessarily interested in when I first was looking at leaving Deloitte. And I think that then comes through in interviews. So, yes, if you want to leave, fine. But make sure the stuff you're applying for is stuff you actually want, because I think that'll come through. I think people can tell if you go for a job interview and you don't actually love the company or you're not interested in the role. I think that'll come through. So it kind of needs to be a yes, you're leaving, but do it because you want to. And the job you're looking at taking is something that really gets you excited and you want to do.
Okay. And finally, a bit of a curveball question. What advice would you have for people such as yourself who have done that, who might be interested in appearing on this podcast? Because I know it's not everyone's cup of tea. I'm pretty sure is this the first time you've done something like this?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't do this on the daily. Yeah. I work in finance.
Yeah,
what I do.
but no, I'm the same. Obviously this is the second episode, but so yeah, this is the second time I've done done something like this. But yeah, any advice for someone who might be watching, thinking, oh yeah, that I'm qualified to appear on here, but I don't know if this is right for me.
I mean, I just think it's fun. Like, actually, there's one thing I do like talking about, and it's kind of what I've done today. And I think the big four to industry move and all of that is so relevant to so many people. And I think actually I'd have appreciated a podcast like this. So yeah, just do it. And like, it's not an interview. We're just chatting. It's good fun. Like, it's just a conversation, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, to anyone listening, then yeah, I'd very much welcome extra guests on here. So obviously feel free to drop me a message, having listened to this. But yeah, Ellen, thank you so much for joining me. Yeah, it's been really interesting getting to know your story, and I'm sure the viewers will be really appreciative of that.
Thanks for having me. It's great fun.
There is. Cheers, Ellen.